Yo, what's good, guys? So welcome back to another video. We are going to be bringing you guys a settings guide for Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 release, and the first thing that I noticed was that the settings were insanely complicated, especially for controller players. There's a ton of settings in the game that not only improve your aim, but they also like improve visibility. And I think that, you know, it's just very hard to find everything and kind of understand how everything affects your game. And I'm also going to give you my personal settings and how I basically came to the conclusion of using what I've wanted to use and just basically help you guys out, because I understand it's pretty complex, and especially for controller, this game is not very controller friendly, you know, as opposed to a game like Call of Duty, for example, where the settings are a lot more simple, which is surprising because I think Call of Duty over the years has gotten even more complicated with its settings, but this is a different beast. So we're pretty much just going to go from the left down, pretty much go over every single setting, and we're going to show you guys the controller settings as well. So that way you guys can make informed decisions as to what you want to play, and my personal recommendations for those of you guys out there that are looking to smoothen out your experience, or for some of you guys that play Call of Duty to basically help you guys there. So let's start with the beginning. We're going to start with accessibility. We're going to turn menu narration, subtitles off. Master volume, we're going to keep on 100 because we can, you know, change that on our mixer or whatever audio device we use. Tinnitus, we're going to turn, or tinnitus, sorry, we're going to turn that all the way off. We don't really care about that stuff. Color profiles, here is you're going to be able to change your primary colors for enemies and stuff like that. So all that I did here was I actually made the enemy color a brighter shade of red, the brightest shade of red you can possibly have, and make that a lot easier for, you know, me to see enemies that are, you know, off in the environment, because I think you turn this to a lower value, it kind of starts to look like it blends in with the environment and stuff like that. So we made that a brighter shade of red, and we kept everything else default. World brightness, we're going to keep this on 100. This is for like HDR and SDR, and I know this game actually is super blown out, so if you guys wanted to, you can actually maybe turn this down, and it might actually help with some of the brighter maps in the game. I haven't actually tested this, but I'll probably actually test this today, now that I think about it. But yeah, feel free to change this if you'd like, or test it on some of the brighter maps or some of the darker maps to see if that affects your visibility. Camera effects is a big one. We're going to make sure we turn off all the motion blur stuff, unless you're just a cinematic Andy and you want the game to look pretty for no reason. Infantry HUD motion, we're going to turn off because at this we don't want any extra motion on our screen. Camera shake, we're going to turn that off. We're going to turn on reduce sprint camera bobbing, because we don't want the camera to be moving around and stuff like that and making it harder to see. Chromatic aberration, turn that off. Infantry crosshair projection, we're going to turn that off, because that will make sure that the crosshair is always centered to the screen and not bobbing around. It's similar to the static effect of the crosshair on Call of Duty. But yeah, turn that off. Next, we're going to go over to our hold and toggle. I didn't change anything here, but this is where actually I did. I changed the skip revive and made it a toggle, but you're not going to actually need to touch anything else. This is all personal preference, and it's going to allow you to basically change whether you hold or toggle to do certain actions. Obviously, if you hold it, you're going to have to hold down the button that you used to do it, or if you put it on toggle, then you can just click it once and then click it again to stop doing that action. So I only actually changed the skip revive to toggle, because having to hold square to kill myself in game is, yeah, I'd rather just hit it once. Okay, next we're going to go down to our controller. We're going to turn off all vibration. We just do not want any sort of vibration at all. Put that on minimal as well. Just vibration. Yeah, I don't play with it. Then these are the tutorials, menu tutorials and game tutorials. This will tell you basically any of the things that you might not be sure about. It'll walk you through it and help you with that. And then here are your prompts and stuff like that for telling you whether you can peek or vault or any of that stuff. I guess you can leave that on, but realistically, if you know where all that is, then you don't really need to have it on, but I just kept it on default. Next, we're going to go over to gameplay. So gameplay, this is where you can have your invert looks on for different things, whether it's vehicle or if you want to invert your like infantry movement and stuff like that. But I do not play with inverted, at least for pretty much anything. Another hold toggle thing, you can just skip this. We already did this. Capture area outline. So this is important because it shows you the entire outline of where the objectives are. If you turn this off, then you won't see the actual borders of the objectives, and it's probably more immersive, but it's kind of pointless. Infantry aim sensitivity, we're going to actually go over this when we go to the controller tab, so just don't worry about this for now. Pretty much everything else we just left on default, but this just gives you more of those hold toggle type of options. Sprinting door barge is a big one. If you don't want to have your door just get slammed open whenever you run through it, you can turn this off, so that way you can peek the doors or open them yourself. But I pretty much left this on default because a lot of these settings are just kind of pointless, and they're just there for the sake of customization, even though they don't really do anything. anything. That's super important. Vehicle sensitivity, this stuff you can change in your controller tab, but I haven't really touched any of that stuff. More of the aim settings, which we're going to go over in the controller tab here in a sec, so don't worry about them in this page. So next, we're going to go over to the controller tab. And this is the big one. I'm sure this is why most of you guys are here. So we're going to start by hitting triangle and going over to the controller settings. And then we're going to click X and we're going to go over into our sensitivity. So now let's actually talk about sensitivity and a lot of the confusingness that goes on in here. So your infantry aim sensitivity is just going to be your overall sensitivity. It's going to be what pretty much everything stems from, what everything is dictated from the standard. I don't know why this is on, but invert vertical look. I don't know. I didn't turn that on. Anyways, so that's where it's going to stem from. I personally play on 60. The higher you go, the faster this is going to be, obviously. Field of view, this is personal preference. I'm playing on 120 because that's what I play on COD. I know some people play on 110, some people play on lower. I haven't really tried anything lower on this game, considering I've been playing on 120 on COD for the most part, but the closer or the lower the FOV is, the easier it's going to be to spot enemies. They're going to appear bigger on your screen, but the higher you put it, the less visual recoil you're going to get, the less camera shake you're going to get, but enemies are going to appear smaller, and that could get troublesome when you're using low zoom optics and you're trying to shoot at people at a distance. So feel free to play with this as you will. Again, if you're playing on like lower resolution monitors, smaller monitors, or smaller TVs, bigger TVs, play with this, make it bigger if you want things to appear smaller, and maybe make it so you have that visual spacing, put it higher. If you want things to get closer, put it lower. Okay, next we're going to go over the vertical aim ratios. So vertical aim ratios is something that is dictated based upon your monitor. Most people play on a 16:9 type of or aspect ratio for a monitor. That's your typical 24 inches and 27-inch monitors. So you're going to put this on at 56 because 16 divided by 9, bunch of crap hoopla math stuff. Anyways, I've been told to put this on 56. So I'm going to leave this on 56. Again, I took some stuff from other creators and this is what they said to put it on. So I left it here. I did not touch it. I just didn't even want to get into the math of it. This is the big one right here. A lot of people will tell you to leave this on. And that is because what it does is it basically makes it so that your differences with your sensitivity when using different zoom optics, it's going to apply some sort of math configuration to kind of like keep those more in line. But personally, I would rather not let the game do some random math conversion to dictate whether my sensitivities are different or the same for different zoom types. I would rather customize this myself. Again, I don't really want to play with this. It feels unnatural. Every time I've used this setting, it almost feels like my aim is just very like loose, is the best way I can put it. It just genuinely feels like I can't, like it just feels so fast when I ADS and I can't actually understand why. But if you put this on, I would probably recommend playing on a lower zoom sensitivity because you're going to notice that this feels very quick and I'm not sure why. It's like applying like some sort of acceleration, I guess, and it doesn't work for me. So I've been leaving this off and customizing my sensitivities and settings individually because I feel like that's just having way better results for me. So next, you're gonna go to the infantry aim assist and you're gonna keep these all on 100. If you feel like you get stuck on opponents after doing this, settings video, you can always turn this down. The best thing that I've kind of noticed is like, so you know how on like Call of Duty, for example, if you like go over targets, you'll feel that slowdown, right? You'll feel that slowdown. But you don't want it to feel like it just instantly gets super jarring and you slow down by a significant amount and you kind of get stuck there. What you could do is just turn this down by values of like 5 or 10 and then just keep swiping your aim over targets and wait until it feels natural, where it doesn't feel like you're getting stuck and you can almost like freely wiggle past the targets. But you also don't want it to be where it's too loose. And let's say you kill an enemy and you go to snap on another target. You want to be able to somewhat accurately click onto the next target. You don't want it to feel like you're basically glazing past enemies. Otherwise, you're just going to have trouble, just re-snapping onto other targets. Okay, so yeah, I keep mine on 100. Zoom snap apparently isn't even the game. I don't know why there's a setting. Apparently it was in the beta and they removed it, but I just have mine on 100 because if you read it, it just basically makes it so you snap onto enemy targets a lot easier, even if you're not directly on them. Again, I don't think it's active, but that sounds amazing. You know, it sounds like aimbot. So I'm just gonna leave this on 100 in case it's actually working on something in the background, but I don't think it is. Okay, next is the big one. This is where a lot of people are confused. So I've done a lot of research. I've watched Exclusive Aces video, Tactical Brits video, and all that stuff. And apparently all of these are very similar. Every single one of these curves are very similar, except for the Battlefield Bad Company 2 one and the linear curve. Linear obviously is going to be a 1-to-1 raw input, and in theory that sounds pretty good, but I have not been able to find a sensitivity or any sort of settings that I've been able to get this to work, as opposed to like on Call of Duty where I was playing on linear for a bit and it was actually pretty good. The Battlefield Bad Company one, it just feels very slow. Whenever I put this on, it just feels like my sensitivity gets so much slower. Or I think it's the actually no, it's not Battlefield Bad Company. It's Battlefield Bad Company 2. That's the one where everything gets a lot sluggish. Yeah, this feels like it's just slowed down my sensitivity so much. And in order for me to get to a more normal value on this aim curve, I have to turn my sensitivity up by a pretty significant amount. So, I mean, you might like it because it provides some extra control, because it does like accelerate differently and it actually is a lot slower. But I personally just would not touch this one just because it's so different from the others. It's just like, what is the point? As for what I use, I just use standard. So what I did was I looked at these settings, I read them, and this is your aim input curve and this is your zoom input curve. So these are two different things. Aim input is aim input is the one where you're just turning. And so what I did was I pretty much I put it on like 60 in terms of my sensitivity, and I just kind of turned. I did things like hip fire, right? And just kind of go from target to target. And I wanted to feel what felt natural. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to basically feel like I could actually turn and I could also track while hip firing. And I just tested all the curves, and again, they all felt relatively the same. So I just kept mine on standard, but if you wanted to change how your hip fire felt, you want to change the first curve. That's what you're going to do. If you want to change the way your aiming feels, you're going to change the second curve. And again, I just kept mine on standard because I didn't feel like having a different curve for aiming and a different curve from turning really made much sense. And I just kept it on standard, and that's what worked for me. The second one is different, or the third option is the most important one, because this affects everything. It not only affects your aiming, it affects your zooming. And what it does is on every single one of these battlefields, the way that acceleration kicked in was different. And obviously they don't really tell you the values here, but basically what acceleration does is when you start to hit the edge of your stick, you are going to max out your sensitivity. And if you have a higher amount of acceleration, you are going to start accelerating earlier into your stick input before you reach the edge. And it's going to accelerate to the fastest point your sensitivity can reach quicker. If you have a lower acceleration value, it's going to start to accelerate slower, or it could accelerate not at all. So the higher you turn this up, for example, I'm actually going to use my mouse here because this is a lot easier to manage, but the more acceleration you have, oh, it didn't even save. This game's awesome. Oh, it did. Okay. So the more acceleration you have, the quicker your stick is going to accelerate. The funny thing is though, about this setting, it's actually backwards. For some reason, when you put it up to 100, you actually get less acceleration. I don't know why they did this, but when you go all the way up, you actually basically get no to little acceleration at all. You're going to notice that when you turn that up, your turning feels a lot slower. It just feels like you're stuck in the mud and it takes you ages to turn. And that's because you're not getting any sort of acceleration. It's going to be the same thing while aiming. It's just going to feel like it takes a while for your sensitivity to really ramp up, and it's not going to feel natural, especially if you come from Call of Duty, because there is acceleration in CAD. So the closer you are to 0, the more acceleration is going to kick in and the more snappy you're going to feel, and that is going to be a good thing. You want to feel snappy. You don't want to feel like your controller is basically delayed. So what I did was I played with these options and I wanted to feel what felt the best. So what I did is I kind of just went through all of these and I tried out how these would feel. And the way that I tested my acceleration is I essentially just went from one curve to the other and I just flicked, because that's going to be where you want acceleration to kick in. You want to feel like you can flick from target to target without basically getting too much resistance or overshooting on the target, because that's where the majority of your acceleration is going to kick in. It's going to be when flicking to targets, or it's going to be when kind of maneuvering the map and running around like this. And I ended up actually just taking this value because I obviously watched a lot of creators and I wanted to know what they were kind of thinking. And so I tried some of their values out to figure out what I liked the most. And for some reason, no matter what sensitivity I actually play on, I've just been stuck on this Battlefield, Bad Company, Battlefield 4 curve. And I've left my value on 12. It's just felt the best. And I feel like I can flick from target to target really easily. And I don't feel like I get stuck. It also feels good while moving. Obviously, I could probably crank up my turning sensitivity if I wanted to, but I like to keep it relatively low because I still think hip firing is a big part of this game, and you want to be accurate while hip firing. Another thing is that you'll notice, and we'll talk about it here in a second, is going to be the dead zones in the game. The dead zones in the game, by default, are not very good. You'll notice that when you try to do small circles with your stick, it's almost going to feel like a square, or it's not going to be very responsive at all. And you're going to notice that even while aiming, you want to be, you want to have that freedom. You want to be able to move your stick ever so slightly and be able to make micro adjustments. And a typical way that I test this in games is I just move my circle in tight little circles. And I'm just going to do this. That way I can get that feeling of freedom and being able to micro adjust whenever I need to pull down for recoil or I need to line up a shot on a head glitch. And those settings are actually hidden away. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to controller settings, you're going to hit triangle, and instead of hitting controller settings, you're going to scroll all the way down, controller tuning, and again, you're going to have your vibration controls, but this is where you see your dead zone controls. And so for my dead zones, I have it on 0 for center, 0 on axial, and 70 because I want the left stick to be as responsive as possible without me accidentally moving my character and accidentally, moving and creating input, because in this game, you do actually want to stand still in a lot of gunfights, especially long range. Next, you're going to go to controller right stick, and at least for my controller on 0 dead zone, I don't feel like I have any stick drift like whatsoever. So I've just kept my right stick dead zone on 0. You'll notice as soon as you start cranking this, I went to the wrong setting. As soon as you start cranking this up, we can go to like an egregious amount. For example, let's go to 19. I'm trying to move my stick right now. I'm trying to move it. It's not moving. I'm stuck. It literally won't let me move my stick. So for me, the most responsive dead zone for me has been on 0, and I just genuinely don't feel like I feel like the internal dead zones on this game are relatively high, that most people will probably be able to play on 0 without accidentally, making inputs. But if you do have a little tiny bit of drift, maybe, turn this up. You can turn this up by point, volume, so probably wouldn't go higher than like 1 or 2. So axial dead zone, this is a weird one, and it took me a while to actually figure out how this worked. But axial dead zone is going to be the way your game cancels out movements when you're maxing out a vertical or horizontal like movement. So for example, I will show you. When you actually put this on the maximum volume of 30, what this is going to do is it's going to give you the max amount of cancellation from up and down to left and right movements when you are maxing a movement out. And what that means is, and it's only when maxing out a movement, it's not when you're not maxing this out. It only applies when you are at full speed or hitting the edges of your stick basically on your controller. So the easiest way to test out what this does was if you actually just move in one direction like this and max out your stick, and then basically move your stick up and down slightly while you're doing this along the edge of your stick, you're going to notice that my stick and my red dot is not deviating. Right now, as I'm holding this to the right, I'm actually moving my stick up and down in order to create like a snaking motion basically, right? And it's barely moving, if not moving at all. And so this is only going to really matter when you are maxing out stick, which is going to be very rare. And it's not going to happen unless you play on a very low sensitivity or you going for some like insane flicking like motion where you are trying to snap way off your screen, or if you're again playing on a low sensitivity. That is only going to apply when you are maxing out the stick. So we are actually going to go back and we're going to turn this to the lowest amount, and you're going to be able to see the difference. So right now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go all the way to the right, but I'm going to start making adjustments up and down while I'm also going to the right, and you're going to notice you're going to see my red dot start to bob, and it's because I turn that axial dead zone down. And so personally, for me at least, like I don't really like notice that difference because again, I'm not flicking in those insanely fast motions, but I also don't want to accidentally get off target when I am going for like turns like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put this on, where is it? I'm going to put this on 2 just to give myself some breathing room and some room for error, because when making those flicking motions, you do also have way less control. So having a small dead zone is actually going to help you there. So again, yeah, we're going to put this on 2 in order to give us some room for error, but it's not really going to make much of a difference. Again, you can even read it at the top. It's going to say when pushing an input to the maximum volume or value. So as long as you're not flicking your stick to the edges, you're not going to really notice much of a difference. And you can keep this on a pretty low value because again, you don't want the game fighting your stick movements. If you're a very precise player and you want full control of the way your stick moves, you want to put this on a relatively low value and you don't want to really touch it. And again, you want maximum input threshold on 100 because you want your maximum input to need to go to the far edge in order to fully maximize your sensitivity. Typically putting this any lower is not really you know, normal, but you can also experiment. Again, if you have stubby thumbs where you struggle to reach the edges of your stick, you could always turn this down and that'll make it so in order to maximize your sensitivity, you don't actually need to hit the edge. You can hit it before you hit the edge of your stick, and you know, it might feel more snappy to you. So I keep mine on 100, but you're welcome to experiment with that. And that is going to be my main controller settings. Next thing you are going to do is you are going to go to your controls and put this on customs. And then you are going to go to infantry passenger control mapping. And this is where you actually apply things like flipped, or you do different button mappings. And I'm going to actually show you what I do. So I flip my left, or my bumpers and my triggers. I actually throw my nades with R2 and I ping with L2. And then I go down here and I shoot with R1 and shoot with L1. So you want to remap them there. You can also remap other things. Like for example, if you want to melee with your circle button or your paddle, you can have that there, but I melee with R3. And then you can also go here and make sure that you can change your, your gadgets. So all of your class abilities are gadgets, and that is where you can swap between them. So that way, if you want to throw your med pack down with left on the D-pad or up on the D-pad or whatever button, you can actually change that here on the gadgets. And then you can also go down here and change your mounting. I have my mounting on down on the D-pad like I do on Call of Duty, even though I don't mount much on Call of Duty. Mounting is actually really good on Battlefield and it'll help you be a lot more accurate. And yeah, that's all I got here. Next, you can go to your ground vehicles and stuff like that. And you can also change your settings here for your sensitivity. I actually don't use vehicles much because I personally just have way more fun when I'm actually on the ground and shooting enemies. But again, you can go here and adjust your sensitivities and stuff like that to match your sensitivity on other, on other vehicles or for the ground sensitivity. But that's where this basically allows you to do it. So you could always go to these and also remap these in order to basically do the same thing. So for example, again, you can go to edit the control settings and you can go here and make it so that way when you use like the handbrakes or zoom and stuff like that, you can actually use different buttons. So again, here's firing, R2. If you want to fire with R1, just click this and hit R1. And now when you go to fire with the ground vehicles, it's going to be R1 instead of L2. So yeah, this is where you go to map that sort of thing. If you don't really care for it, then you can just leave this on default. Yeah, transport vehicles, helicopters, gunners, all that stuff. Joystick, you don't touch. But that's going to do it basically for the controller settings. That's all of them. That's what I play on. Oh, actually, I missed something. We actually didn't talk about this yet. But when you scroll down here to Infantry Aim Sensitivity, what this is going to be is this is going to be similar to your ADS sensitivity on Call of Duty. So when you go to aim, your sensitivity is going to scale off of your main sensitivity. And this is what's going to be. Unlike Call of Duty, where you aim in and your sensitivity gets slower by default, even if you are on 1.0. On Battlefield, it does not. If you play on 100, your aiming sensitivity will be the same as your turning sensitivity. I personally like the way this feels on Battlefield because I feel like it allows me to get proper muscle memory, because when I turn and when I aim, the sensitivity is identical, which means that I am constantly going to be applying the same muscle memory I use to maneuver the map into my aiming. And whenever I aim, I'm going to apply that same muscle memory while aiming as I do when turning and hip firing. So I keep this on 100. But if you want a more classic Call of Duty feel, you can turn this down to a value of like 90 or 80, where you're going to really feel like your aim slows down. I keep zoom transition sensitivity smoothing on. What this is going to be like, it's going to be like instant or gradual from Call of Duty. If you like instant, turn this off. If you like gradual, turn this on. Again, this setting does not matter for me because my sensitivities are basically identical with my turning and hipfire sensitivity as my aiming. But if you guys want that instant slowdown when you ADS, turn this off and then mess with these values. Because yeah, I didn't touch these, but again, make sure you turn off also gyro and you turn off the flick look mode because you don't really use these at all with the controller. Next, we're going to go over to the graphics tab. The graphics tab, I have a custom configuration from Freethy and Merc FPS Hub where they basically gave you a config folder and they made you paste it into the Battlefield settings. But for the most part, you can do all this stuff yourself, minus a couple of things. You put this on quality, or you put the graphics quality on custom. You go in here and turn everything off or to low. That's going to give you the best performance. World brightness, UI brightness, we talked about this earlier, but I just left it on default. Turn the sharpness up. It's going to increase visibility a lot. And then for your advanced settings, so for me, I actually play on DLSS quality. I think this game is so bad visually, even with anti-aliasing off. In other games, it would almost like sharpen the image and make it so it's like very jagged. When I turn anti-aliasing off on this game, I actually find it is very blurry. And then the rest of the aliasing techniques, what they do is they just degrade performance. So I just don't turn them on. It just feels like it makes the game worse visually, and it also makes you lose FPS. So turn this off. And this is a secret one. A lot of people say they have troubles with the visuals. I get it. Trust me, I was playing on anti-aliasing off and I found it very hard to see. Everything felt very blurry. But as soon as I turned on DLSS on quality, it added a lot of sharpness to my game, and I just accidentally turned this on, and now I got to redo my settings. Okay, where was I? So I actually play with the DLSS quality on because I genuinely feel like it makes the game sharper and it also improves your performance. So notice that edges and stuff like that look way sharper and it's just way easier to see, and it also gives you some frames. So if you guys want to try that out, try playing with the DLSS on. No, it does not add delay, it does not do any of that stuff. It just basically downscales or upscales to the resolution you want to play on, and does a whole bunch of wizardry. But the most thing that it does is it sharpens your image quite a bit, in my opinion, as opposed to leaving TAA completely, or anti-aliasing completely off. Again, on the graphics tab, you can customize your field of view and all that stuff, but this has already been customized in other places. Make sure you have the Sovis filter on. The Sovis filter on is going to help you see enemies. If you turn this off, it's going to look more realistic, but it's going to be harder to spot enemies, and you do not want that. Advanced HUD settings, you can go here and turn the horizontal HUD padding at 100, and what that does is it basically takes all your minimap and every sort of overlay on your screen. It brings it more into the center. I do the same thing on COD. It just makes things a lot easier to see. Next, you're going to go to minimap size and make sure this is on large. This is going to make it so the minimap is a lot bigger and it's a lot easier to see. You can also go to view distance on foot and turn this up to 250. That's going to make it so when you are on foot, the minimap is bigger. It covers a wider range and you're going to be able to see where more enemies are. Don't put this on 300. It's going to be a lot harder to see. And if you put this on 160, well, I don't think it covers enough of the map. So I keep this on 250. Here you can mess with various opacity settings. I personally just left this default. I didn't touch any of this stuff. I turned off the compass because I don't really use it. And then the next big one that we're going to go to is we're going to go all the way down to HUD icons, and we're going to mess with our HUD icons because a lot of this stuff actually does matter. This is going to be showing you whether icons like the objectives, the revives, and all that stuff, all that visual clutter is going to be very visible, or it's going to be more opaque. Or transparent, sorry, so that way you can actually see what the hell you're shooting at when you aim in. The big ones that you're going to want to change here are any of the zoomed ones. When you zoom in and aim in, typically you are looking for a shot or you are taking a gunfight, and you want all of these icons to fade into the background or completely disappear because they are not important in a gunfight. So basically, for the most part, anything that is zoomed when it comes to like objectives and stuff like that, I put this on 0. For friendlies are still important to see while you're zoomed in because it's going to kind of give you an idea of where your friendlies are, and it's going to make sure that you don't shoot them. So I actually tune these values a bit. You're welcome to actually touch these and copy them if you'd like, but it's going to help your visibility a lot. The revive icons, I put the 0 when aiming because when there's a ton of people dead and I'm trying to shoot at somebody, I don't want to see those icons, but as soon as I aim out, I can see them again. So I put that on 0. Again, your squad revive and stuff like that, you want to keep on values so you can see where your teammates are if your teammates need revives. But in terms of like friendlies and like the randoms, just keep that off. Copy those settings. Enemy icon scale, you can turn this up and make that diamond over enemy players' heads bigger, or you can turn it down. I don't know why you would, because visibility is king. Neutral icons, again, we all know where the flags are and the objectives, so I don't really see what the point is of putting them any higher, but when you zoom in, just put that on 0 so that way you can see, and then you can obviously mess with your pings. You're welcome to copy and paste these settings, pause the video at any point in time to get a good look at them and copy and paste them, but your visibility is going to improve a ton when you are aiming and all those objective icons just kind of fade into the background. Next, we're going to go to, actually, it doesn't really matter anymore. We're on the audio page. Keep the master volume on 100, sound effects volumes on 100. I turned all the musics off, all the soldiering, campaign, voiceovers. I just don't really care for it. UI sound effects, you can turn this off or turn it on. Doesn't really matter. Hit indicators you want to hear. And I play on sound system headphones and high dynamics. I personally like the way this sounds because I feel like it turns down a lot of the explosions and a lot of those super loud bangs that go off in game, but it still, you know, keeps the presence of like footsteps and stuff like that a little bit louder, especially when they get close to you. I know some people like to play on war tapes because it actually increases the loudness of everything, but I personally feel like this just clutters the mix and it makes things a lot more hectic. But you're welcome to try all of these. I personally don't feel like I hear footsteps very loudly anyways, unless people are relatively close, and that's something that they might end up fixing in the future. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. That's gonna do it for the settings video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys are playing a lot better after going through my settings. Again, this is just my personal preference. This is what I've landed on, but you're welcome to tune those values to your liking. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did enjoy the video, hit the video with a like, comment if you guys have any questions, and I'll try to answer some of them. But this is just what I came up with, and it's been working out the best for me. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I got some gameplays coming up for you guys with some of my favorite guns that you guys might want to consider using or leveling here in the future. I'll see you guys later. Peace.